Hey there, my name's Lauren and welcome to my channel where we're all about furniture flips, DIY, and vintage home decor. In today's video, we're going to be flipping these old, beat up, and outdated nightstands and turning them into something contemporary and modern, kind of like what you see behind me. Before we get started, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Laurenberrymack so you never miss a flip. Without further ado, let's get started. I bought these nightstands from one of my favorite local thrift stores in Pensacola, Florida. They were originally for sale for $70 for the pair, and I passed on them because they had a little too much damage for me to justify spending that much. But my patience paid off because I came back a couple days later and they were on sale for half off. So I scored these awesome mid-century Bassett nightstands for only $35. I've been flipping furniture for a profit for a couple of years now, so I do have some fancier tools, but I decided to make my first video on my channel as beginner-friendly as possible. So, here we go! The first step of any furniture flip is to remove the hardware. I'm planning to keep the original hardware, so I will keep this hardware handy to put back on this set at the end. I removed the drawers and used my shop vac to vacuum the inside of the drawers and the inside of the nightstand itself. After this, I gave this piece a really good clean. I used Dawn dish soap, warm water, and a sponge, and I scrubbed this piece clean. This piece was pretty dirty, so I did this a couple times. It's super important to clean your pieces thoroughly or you'll likely have difficulty with paint adhesion. I gave the nightstands one more rinse with warm water to make sure there is no more soap residue left behind. I went ahead and filled in the major flaws with wood filler as I knew I would likely have to do multiple layers. I'm using DAP wood filler and a plastic spreader here. After the first round of wood filler dried, I gave the whole body of both of the nightstands a good scuff sand with 180 grit sandpaper. I'm using my Surf Prep sander here, although it is not necessary to have a fancy sander. I'm not sponsored, wish I was. I was definitely influenced by other furniture flipper creators into buying one. It was definitely worth the investment for me as I flip a ton of furniture, but if you're just starting out, this sander is not a necessity. A cheap sander from the hardware store or sanding by hand can definitely do the trick. After I was done scuff sanding, I added more wood filler to the areas that needed another layer and I let that layer dry. Then I sanded again. I wiped all the dust away with a damp microfiber cloth. The nightstands were super wobbly, so I decided to remove the existing base. I used a flathead screwdriver to remove the screws that were holding the base in place. Then I pulled the base right off. I took a hammer to the part that was glued on and I removed that too. Next, it was time to apply the primer. I'm using Kills Restoration Primer in a foam brush and a foam roller. My go-to primer used to be Ben's shellac-based primer, but the price has gone up so much that I searched for different alternatives to that. This Kills Restoration Primer is a cheaper alternative to Ben. It's water-based, which makes for way easier cleanup. I rolled on this primer using a small foam roller and a foam brush for the edges of this piece. I typically don't worry about brush strokes with primer as I'm planning to sand it smooth after it dries. After my primer dries, it's finally time for the fun part, some paint. I decided on using Fusion Mineral Paint in the color Bayberry. It's a wonderful deep green color that will look amazing on this piece. I'm using a brush on the edges and then rolling on the bigger areas. This paint has amazing coverage, so I'm only anticipating having to apply 2 coats. Typically with Fusion Mineral Paint, you don't have to prime your piece. However, with the amount of wood filler I had to use on this piece, I decided to prime to help promote the most even finish possible. Between coats of paint, I hand sand with 220 grit sandpaper to smooth out any brush strokes or imperfections. After I wiped the dust away, it was time for the next coat. While the paint's drying, I decided to tackle the drawers. I want to keep a wood element to this piece, so I'm planning to remove this existing finish, sand it down to raw wood, and restain. This finish is pretty thick, so I tackled the first layer with my carbide scraper. I then used my sander to sand it down to raw wood using 80 grit sandpaper and then going up to 120, 180, and finally 220 grit sandpaper for a smooth finish. I stained the drawers in Minwax's Provincial Color Stain and I let it dry for 24 hours before applying a top coat. I decided to keep the original hardware, but they needed a good clean first. I boiled them in a mix of white vinegar and water for about 20 minutes. After I was done boiling them, I took them out of the hardware soup mixture and applied Barkeeper's Friend with extra fine steel wool. I was not expecting the gold to flake off and reveal the true color of this hardware, silver. I was going to spray paint them gold, but I decided to like the silver and I wanted to keep it. I brought the nightstands back inside and reattached the hardware. After that, these nightstands were done. Just a reminder, this was the before, and this is the after. What do you think of the results? Leave your thoughts down in the comments below and be sure to subscribe to my channel for more furniture flips, tips, and tricks. Thanks for watching!